How's it going, Diablo fans? So, like, just before the season is starting, I thought I wanted to check in on some of the sorceress bugs which are around in the internet and being reported. And, I figured, like, I give it a go and just revalidate some of these because I feel like, people did not spend enough research on the bugs and they didn't really prove that they are existing. And if somebody said something is existing, he couldn't give me proof for anything or whatever. So, you know what? I decided to, like, test all the bugs which are existing myself, and I'm also going ahead and will test abilities which are not being reported as bugged myself. It's gonna take a while, but this is the first batch which I consider the most important ones which are being reported all over again, and I'm gonna basically include proof for every single bug I verified or I invalidated, and you can check the description down below to jump to the proof directly. At the very beginning now, I'm just gonna give a brief summary on the bugs and if they exist or not. So I want to start with Worst Mastery. It has been out forever that Worst Mastery's damage bonus is not working. This is false. Worst Mastery's damage bonus is working as expected. Make sure to jump forward to the proof. Also make sure after this short explanation, I'm just gonna put one sheet with all the numbers I encountered, and after that I will, get all the additional proof videos if you are interested in them. You don't have to watch the proof videos, you can just take my word as it is. But again, Worst Mastery is not bugged, working as expected. The 15% works as expected. The 25% works as expected. Absolutely no bug here. The second one I wanted to test is Asus Ferocity. So Asus Ferocity works on all damage but fire damage, at least that's what people say. The activator is any damage. That is not like something, don't misunderstand this. I know a lot of times people are saying, no, the bug part is that it activates on all damage. No, that's not the truth. So it specifically says critical strike that kill enemies or hit boss grant bonuses against all enemies for 3 seconds. So you can activate this with any skill. It doesn't matter if it's lightning, fire or cold, but it says the fire critical strike damage is increased and fire critical strike chance is increased. And the assumption here is that there's a bug and that this works for all damage. And this is actually the truth. Asus Ferocity is bugged. I verified it and it is working for all types of damage. So you can use Asus Ferocity no matter if you play lightning, cold or fire, it will always work. Another one which has been brought up is Tactician. So a lot of people say Tactician doesn't work because apparently some guy uploaded some weird blizzard proof where he's casting a defensive skill in the middle of a blizzard and he's saying this is not working, blah 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 blah. So this is false. I verified it. Tactician is working as expected. One more thing has been brought up is Elementalist. That Elementalist is not working because it doesn't give a buff icon, and people assume there's no Elementalist buff icon. It's not working because the Tarasha ring is actually doing pretty much the same, but it has a buff icon. So Elementalist is a debuff on the mob. So you have to hit the mob with the damage, and the mob gets a debuff, then taking more damage. And also I verified Elementalist, and it's working as expected. And last but not least, there's one bug which a lot of people don't know about, which is Fridgit Breeze. So this is not about being damaged. This is about Fridgit Breeze actually works on all damage. So it says cold damage against vulnerable enemies has to up to a 20% chance to generate 15 mana. Well, it doesn't have to be cold damage. It works with any damage. So you can do lightning, fire, or cold damage. So if you're struggling with mana in your lightning build or in your fire build, and you maybe have spec'd into Hoarfrost anyway, just put the 3 points into Fridgit Breeze, and this will help you with mana regeneration a lot. That was just a summary of my findings, and on the next page I will show you the damage numbers. So I will show you the expected damage and I will show you the real damage, and after that I'm gonna upload all the proof in case you're interested. The proof is going to be in ×2 speed because I just don't want to make this video too long, and if you don't believe me, you can go frame by frame through the proof. I did not record all the proof in one video, so potentially I could have changed the items in between and faked these numbers, but that was not my intention. You can verify these numbers yourself. I just want to tell you what abilities are bugged and are not bugged, so I can make my build guides properly and don't have to exclude stuff which is potentially not bugged or whatever. So just take from this what you want to take from this. If you don't trust me, you know, feel free to like do these proofs yourself. I did them. I recorded 200 hits on the baselines and I recorded 100 hits on the proofs. And for me, this is as accurate as it goes. Obviously, you could create, like, you could record more hits, but for me, this is enough. So I hope you find this video useful and I hope it helps you like crafting your first builds for the new season. That's it from me now. Thank you so much for watching. And after this, I'm gonna add all the proofs. So make sure to jump to the proof you're interested in and check it out. So in this screen, we actually see the numbers. So I have listed all the numbers here. So my baseline for like Arclash was like 374.07. So that was my Arclash damage basically without any buffs. Then for Asus Ferocity, my baseline was 734.9. This was my Arclash crit damage without any buffs. And then for Tactician, I used ice shards. I don't even know why I did. I thought it was faster. Anyway, for Tactician, I used ice shards and my baseline was 316.97. And for Elementalist, again, we used Arclash. It is the same baseline, 374.07. So for this Mastery, just alone with the 15% buff, we got 428.79. For Verse Mastery after doing a crit, so for the 25% buff, we got 449.53. So Verse Master, we have like 14.63 and 20.17. So this is pretty close to the expected values. So I would say this is proven that Verse Mastery is working as expected. Then for Asus Ferocity, we had 936.97. That's a 27.5% increase. So Asus Ferocity is working for all skills, so it is still bugged. Tactician, we had like a 347 to a 316, so that's a 9.49% damage increase. So Tactician is also working as expected. And last but not least, for Elementalist, we have a 15.5% damage increase. So Elementalist pretty much hit the mark. It's also working as is expected. For Verse Mastery, I expected a little bit higher damage because, you know, sometimes we had damage after a crit, so I would have expected it to be a little bit higher. But in the end, you know, there was very little crits because I had very little crit gear. So this is still within the bounds of, you know, regular statistical failure here. So this is just the proof numbers, and now the proof videos will be following. So if you're just, you know, confused how the proof videos work, you know, just jump back to the proof numbers so you can understand again the conclusion at the very end of the proofs and how it works. Okay, so let's get our baseline on Arclash boss damage. So you can see I have a boss training dummy here. As soon as it gets staggered, I will not count the hits anymore. And I only have this weapon here, which does damage to crowd control, yes, but we're not going to crowd control, so it's not going to have any impact. And as for our Paragon board, we have no damage whatsoever. I just have these mana nodes in. I just leave them in here for now, but it doesn't do anything, right? And I have no damage modificators in this board whatsoever. So absolutely no damage modificators. Let's look at the skill tree. So we just have 1 point into Arclash. And this is just for maximum mana. Doesn't do anything. I have my defensive skills here. They don't do anything. And besides that, I have no skill points. So really, we're just doing the raw Arclash damage. And we're going to do another 200 hits now, record it. And then after that, we're going to use this baseline to compare other stuff again. So let's start recording.
15 minutes later.
Alright, that should be enough, so let's go through this in slow motion again and record all the white hits to establish our baseline. All right, so this is our baseline. As you can see, the average is 374.07, and we can use this as a baseline for lightning damage with Arclash versus bosses, and now we're going to test some abilities against it. All right, now we have our Arclash boss baselines. We still have exactly the same stats, exactly the same Paragon, exactly the same empty skill tree here. So let's just change one little thing. We're going to add Verse Mastery now. So it says close enemies take 15% increased damage from your shock skills, so we expect this to do 15% more damage. Also, it says after critical strikes, the bonuses get increased by 25% for 3 seconds. So I'm still gonna just use this because if we do a critical strike, it's just gonna add some extra damage, right? So it shouldn't be a big deal that we actually count the white hits which happen after critical strikes. So let's record this for now and see where we go. And after that, again, I will record all the white hits again. In this case, 100 white hits again. And we compare it against the baseline.
15 minutes later.
Right, I'm already stopping this. This is more than 100 hits. And I guess you already saw that there's like significantly higher numbers. But again, let's go through the footage and see in slow motion and then calculate the difference. All right, so as you can see, let's just change this to 100 again, right? So we have 428.79 total average damage. If we compare this to our Arclash boss base, that was 374.07. So, 10% of that is 37. So this is pretty much 15%, right? So definitely the 15% part of Verse Mastery is working. It is not true what they say to you. It's not bugged. And after this, we're going to test the 25% portion. So after we have a buff. All right, so now we want to test the 25% buff part of Verse Mastery. We already verified the 15% is working, so now let's check if the 25% is working. To do that, I just want to have a little bit more crit chance here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my Asus boots on. So as you can see, there's no damage bonus on it whatsoever, right? So the only thing is critical strike damage, but we're only counting white hits. So this really doesn't change anything regarding our baseline damage. So let me just put these on. And then I'm just gonna get some a little bit extra crit chance. So I'm gonna go 3 points into causing currents just to have some extra crit chance. And then furthermore, I'm just gonna increase my movement speed with shock skills here. This is also just gonna, give me a little bit more crit chance with Asus, so this doesn't take forever. Besides that, I'm still gonna have Verse Mastery. The only difference now is I'm only gonna count white hits while the critical strike buff is active. And let me show it to you. Like you see the buff, this is the causing currents buff, and this is the, Verse Mastery buff here. There's the same icon. So while this little buff icon, let me just show it to you again, at the bottom will be active. I will only count white hits while this is active. So let's start the recording.
15 minutes later.
Alright, this should be more than enough hits, so let's count all the white hits again and see if the 25% part of Verse Mastery is working as expected. All right, so we recorded all the white hits. You can see our average, again, I have to change this to 100. Our average is 449.53. Our average without the critical bonus was 428.79. Our base was 374.07, right? So 10% of this is 37. 37 times 2 is, what is it, 74. So with this, we are like, 70, like we're at around like 20, a little bit more over 20%. Again, I put the calculation at the very beginning, but I guess at this point we also have proven that the 25% part of Verse Mastery is also working, so the ability works completely as expected. Okay, so let's do Asus Ferocity. So first of all, it has been said that Asus Ferocity damage works not just for fire damage, but for all damage, and same with the critical strike chance. So first of all, there's a common misunderstanding where it is not about the activation of Asus Ferocity. So activation of Asus Ferocity just says critical strike that kill enemies or hit a boss grant both bonuses against all enemies for 3 seconds. So I just gotta hit the boss and it's gonna activate it. So if you see, like now if I arclish the boss, after I crit, I get the Asus Ferocity buff here. So this is not bug, this is intentional, right? The bug is that the fire critical strike damage and fire critical strike chance actually are not just fire, or they are all skills. So basically, if I hit it with Arclash, I shouldn't get any extra crit chance and I shouldn't get any extra critical strike damage. And I'm gonna prove now if that's true or not. So let's remove Asus Ferocity for now. Again, we just have movement speed and some causing currents critical strike chance here. Besides that, we do not have any modifiers in skill tree which affect our critical strike chance. I will actually put 3 into precision magic. I will just tell you in a second why. And we have nothing here which increases our critical strike chance. Everything is unspec'd, and we just use a basic Arclash without enhanced Arclash, so we just have the pure Arclash damage. And on our Paragon board, we have nothing in here. Like, I just have maximum mana here. It's not going to affect my critical strike multiplier. And nothing here is going to affect my critical strike multiplier at all. And then for gear, I'm just using a stuff which damage to crowd controlled. We're hitting a boss, he's never going to be crowd controlled. The other stats here don't matter at all. Then I'm using Asus boots. This just gives me additive critical strike damage, so for our calculations, this doesn't matter at all. It just gives me more crit chance. And then I'm using gloves, which basically just have attack speed, lucky hit, and crit chance. Besides that, I'm using no gear, so I have the raw stats here, and I'm using just Ravenous, which is like maybe gonna proc a couple of times just to give me some more attack speed, but it's probably not even gonna proc at all because I literally have no lucky hit chance here. So first thing now, we're gonna establish the baseline. So again, skill tree, Asus Ferocity is gone, and I'm now gonna check all the yellow hits which happen during the Asus Ferocity buff. So I'm not going to include the first critical strike, which is going to apply Asus Ferocity. I'm only going to check critical strikes which happen during Asus Ferocity buff. Because I don't know at this point if the initial hit, which is proccing Asus Ferocity, will receive the bonus or not. So we're only going to take those yellow hits which happen during the actual buff, while we see the buff icon on the bar. So let's go on and establish the baseline. I assume this is going to take a while, so I'm only going to do 100 hits now. With 25%, I think 100 hits are going to be accurate enough to see like a significant change here. Actually, oh no, we're just doing the baseline. So the baseline has no Asus Ferocity. We're just going to record all yellow hits here, right?
15 minutes later.
Alright, I guess this should have been 100 hits by now. So let's now go into slow motion and calculate the baseline. Alright, so let's do the baseline. All yellow hits. Let's go. All right, so there we have our baseline. Let's change this to 100. So our base damage is 734.9 average hit. So 734.9 is our average hit. And now we're going to change to Ace's Ferocity on and going to make the stuff once again, right? All right, so here we have the new spreadsheet, Arclash with Asus buff. And let me just stagger this guy real quick. So we start with a fresh dummy. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put on Asus now, right? And we're going to do the same thing again. But keep in mind, we're only going to count hit which happened during the actual Asus buff. So if I get an Asus buff right now, so now it's active. And if I crit now within the buff duration, I will count it. I will not count the initial hit. So everything which happens within the duration, I would count. Everything which happens out of the duration, I do not count. So this will take a while, but I think I'm going to still make the 100 hits. And let's record it for now, and then we go through it like frame by frame, and let's see if Ace's Ferocity is really bugs and works on all damage.
15 minutes later.
Okay, I guess that should be more than enough, so let's go through it frame by frame. Alright, so frame by frame, Ace's Ferocity activated. All right, so I finished going through frame by frame. This is a 936.97 average. So let's go back to our baseline. That was a 734.9 average. So 25%. Well, 10% is 73. So that's like, what is it, like 220 more? So we should end up at somewhere like 950. So I guess at this point it is proven that Asus Ferocity is indeed bugged. The damage works for all sources. Alright, so since we already have our Arclash boss baseline established, we can use this to do additional tests. So what I want to do now is I want to test some of the more common sorceress nodes. So for example, Elementalist. Elementalist is pretty much used in every single sorceress build, most of the time at the first board. And it says dealing fire cold or lightning damage to an enemy increases all damage you deal to them by 5% for 10 seconds. So it doesn't have a buff icon, so I assume it's a debuff on the enemy, which you can see. But let's see if it actually works. So you can see I have 277 intelligence right now. So let's put in the Elementalist glyph here. So I gotta get 25 extra int, right? So remember this number 277? Alright, so now we have the buff. We don't have any other damage buff from Elementalist because we're not buffing any damage nodes here. So we just have the pure 15% from the additional bonus. So we have to get back to 277 intelligence. So let me just remove this board here real quick. And alright, 277 intelligence. So now we have exactly the same baseline than we used for the recording for the Arclash boss damage, but with Elementalist. So if we look at our skill tree, still we have nothing else here. None of the key passives in here. This is just critical strike stuff. No devouring blaze or whatever. So nothing really here is boosting our damage at all. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add fireball to the mix because we wanna like trigger the damage bonus for Elementalist. We don't know at this point if it works like the Tarasha ring. So if it stacks like and you only have to refresh one element, we don't know this at this point. So we're gonna deal damage with fireball and ice shards pretty much once every 10 seconds here to see if this is actually working. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna go for the dummy and I'm gonna start with ice shards, fireball, and then I'm gonna do like 10 Arclash. And then I'm gonna go with the whole rotation again, right? Ice shards, blah, 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 Arclash. Then I'm gonna only count the white hits for Arclash again. So let's do this right now. Let's open up the sheet. I already have like an empty, so here we have the Arclash boss base again. I have an empty sheet here, so let's just start the recording for now to get the white hits. And we're gonna do just 100 again. This is going to be enough for this. So let's start.
15 minutes later.
Alright, that should be enough, so let's go through it in slow motion. All right, so we can see our average now. I have to change this to 100 again. Our average now is 430, and before we had an average of 374. So that's pretty much 15%, right? Well, it's actually a little bit less than 15%. No, wait, it is more? Well, it's a little bit more than 15% in this calculation already, but I think this is still within normal error. We had 374 and now we have 430. So this would be like 15 too much actually. I don't know where it comes from, but I guess at this point we can definitely see that Elementalist is working and this is to be proven. All right, let's do Tactician. Again, we only have ice shards. We have no damage modifiers whatsoever. You can see we have no glyphs. We just have some extra mana pool. And we don't have any glyph in here right now. And what we're going to do is, again, in our inventory, we just have these 2 rings, which don't do any damage. I just have them for more mana regeneration. They do not matter for ice shards damage whatsoever. Same goes for my stuff. This is a random stuff. It doesn't do any damage, anything special or anything. We have bonus damage to crowd control. We're not going to crowd control, so easy. So let's do the dummy, and first we just shoot it with our regular spell, and then we're gonna count like 200 hits, and we're gonna see if we can actually see a difference.
15 minutes later.
All right, so now we recorded all the hits, and I just added some formulas here real quick. So we have the minimum, basically, we have the maximum, we have the total, and we have the average damage. And I calculated this once per line to see how, accurate we are. And you can see we are within, let's say, this is like a 3% margin, I would say, right? So we are like far away from like a 10% error here. So we technically, I think, wouldn't have to record another 200 hits. I think we should be good with recording 100 hits, especially if we take the middle here, which is like 316.97. That is pretty much going to be in the middle here. But anyway, like we're going to do the 200 hits just once for the example now. But this is our baseline. So this is raw ice shards damage. Basically 316.97 per hit is the average of our unbuffed ice shards. So we just establish our baseline. And I guess by taking 400, I guess by just taking 200 hits, probably you could take 1,000 hits. And you know what? You would probably be like a tiny bit off 316. So maybe you would be like, I think we are still within the range of like a 1 to 1.5% error here. But I think that's going to be just as accurate as we need it. Okay, so let's go with Tactician. You might notice we cannot put Tactician into here because it's going to give us 12 extra intelligence, and this is going to be 1.2% extra damage, so this is not going to be accurate, so we're going to put the Tactician glyph somewhere else, right? So let's put it here. So let's choose the glyph socket here. We put in the Tactician again. And now we have to compensate the intelligence we are getting to reach the dexterity. We need 15 more dexterity, so we go through here. That's 10 intelligence we choose, right? And then we get the dexterity. There's no more intelligence here. So we have the dexterity now. Crit chance doesn't matter because we're only counting white hits, but we got 10 extra intelligence. So we got to strip 10 extra intelligence from our skill tree. Let's see where we can actually do this. And we strip 10 extra intelligence somewhere. I can go these two and remove these two. So we remove 10 intelligence again, so we are exactly at the same baseline now. The only difference is we have the Tactician glyph in here now, and you can see I just got the 10% buff. I didn't get anything out of the glyph, so we are at exactly the same damage level than before. So let's do the same now with just having the Tactician buff online. So we have everything still the same. And look, if we're going to press this, we're going to get the Tactician buff here, right? So we're only going to be casting during the Tactician buff. So let's do Frost Nova here. Left click. We're actually not going to count this, so I had the wrong hotkey. Oh, so again, let's do Flame Shield. Let's do some hits. Let's stop. Do some hits. Frost Nova, do some hits. And so on. I'm gonna see you like after this in the slow motion, more like, I'm not gonna do slow motion, I'm gonna do speed run. I'm just gonna show you like the total number of hits there.
15 minutes later.
All right, so I just copied this sheet here. You can see this is my base sheet. This is the new sheet, so I already have the grand totals in here in the very bottom. And now we're just gonna do the same thing with Tactician on. So we already if we looked at the footage, and we already saw how I did it in the fast run. So I'm just gonna now count the hits. So let's go, and I'm gonna be back with the conclusion right after this. Alright, so I'm stopping here because we can already see like pretty much that this is as 10% as it gets, right? So with Tactician, let's just go back. So baseline without Tactician, our average was 316 damage per hit. With Tactician, our average is 347 damage per hit. So, 316 plus 347, that's 31. So this is like very, very close to 10%, right? So this is exactly what expected. Also, our maximum hit is now 412. Our maximum hit has been 405. So this is pretty much, again, exactly 10%. So at this proof, for all you people out there saying Tactician is not working because you did some like random testing with all your gear on and whatever. So this is how you test stuff, right? You get rid of all your gear, you get rid of all your modifiers, and then you take the raw numbers and then you compare it against each other, and you can see like 10% damage bonus is absolutely there. 100% Tactician is working, proven at this point, period. Okay, so there's one more bug which is potentially be interesting for you. I want to show because this is like not really mentioned anywhere, but it's a pretty significant bug. And I thought, I don't have time to test all the damage skills right now. I will do this at some point, but I want to show you just one more bug, and that is concerning the Fridgit Breeze. So Fridgit Breeze says cold damage against vulnerable enemies has up to 20% chance to regenerate 15 mana. Well, let me tell you, this actually works for all damage, not just cold damage. So I can do this with whatever, Chain Lightning, doesn't matter. Like any damage will basically trigger this. And let me just show you right now. So let's just take Chain Lightning, for example. I'm just going to put Chain Lightning, nothing else here, no vulnerable, whatever. And now I have no mana regeneration whatsoever in my skill tree. I'm not using Avalanche. And I'm not using any items with mana regeneration. This is just a stat stick. This is just a stat stick. Well, don't really need this. So this is just a stat stick. No mana regeneration on here. Really nothing here. Okay, I need one more pact here. So let me just put some random stat stick on here. So this is also just a stat stick, right? No mana regeneration on here. If I look at my character sheet, if I could find it, wait, so here, what I go. If I look at my character sheet, if we scroll down here, we have no mana regeneration on lucky hit whatsoever. So our mana regeneration is at 10. There's nothing here. So we have no mana regeneration. So let's say I go for my Chain Lightning now, which I just spec'd, and I just hit this dummy. You look at my mana. It's now empty, but it doesn't regenerate because I have nothing to regenerate mana. As you can see, nothing is happening, right? So now let me just spec into Fridgit Breeze here. Oh, I actually did it already. So basically it didn't happen yet. But if we continue hitting this, at some point you will see the 15 mana regenerating from Fridgit Breeze. So let's just keep hitting it for now. See, it's like a steady pace, but at some point this will trigger. Remember, it's a lucky hit base, so the chance, like on my almost naked gear, is pretty low. Just wait for it. It's gonna happen eventually. There it happened. Did you see it? Let's just do it one more time. See, there it happened again. So just compare like the speed. This keeps like rising. And if it triggers, it basically starts, if you look at the mana pool at the very bottom, it will start a little bit over the bottom. Like it's, after Chain Lightning, as you can see, it starts at the bottom. And let's just wait for one more trigger here. If you wait for it, it takes the longest. There you see. So that basically means Fridgit Breeze, like if you're struggling with mana and you might already be into like Hoarfrost because you have like Frozen Synergy. You can absolutely spec into Frigid Breeze, and this is going to give you like a nice little lucky mana regeneration, and it's going to work with fire, lightning, it doesn't matter. It's going to work on all damage.